Okay, so GPS tracking in teenagers, huh? Big topic. We're going deep on this one. Articles, research, even some real-life stories because, let's face it, this isn't just about knowing where your kid is every second. It's about trust and letting go, which is never easy.
It's that classic dilemma, isn't it? Trying to balance a parent's instinct to protect with a teenager's very real need to spread their wings, and the technology we have now, it makes that whole balancing act even trickier.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the tools exist now that our parents couldn't even imagine. But is that always a good thing?
Right. I mean, take, for example, Megan Rumney. She decided to get her son, Harrison, a smartphone. He's 14. Pretty normal these days.
Totally.
But she made him a deal. Phone for location tracking. She wanted him to have some freedom, bike to his friend's house, maybe grab a burger after school. But also, she wanted that peace of mind, knowing he was where he said he'd be.
I get it. And I'm guessing she's not the only parent thinking this way, is she?
Not even close. There was a study just came out this year in the Journal of Family Psychology, and get this, it found that half of U.S. parents are using location tracking apps on their kids. Life 360, Find My iPhone, all of them.
Wow, half. That's huge. I had no idea it was that common.
Yeah. And, get this, 14% admitted to doing it secretly without their kids' knowledge, which should give us pause.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Makes you wonder, right? What's driving that need? Why do parents feel like this is necessary in the first place?
Well, if I put on my worried parent hat for a second, I think it's easy to see where they're coming from. I mean, we hear about school shootings every day, the fentanyl crisis, child trafficking. It's scary out there. You just want to keep your kids safe, and maybe this feels like a way to do that. Have some control, Especially in a world that feels increasingly out of control.
Absolutely. Those are very real fears, and we're not dismissing that at all. But here's the flip side. What about the impact of this constant monitoring on the teenagers themselves? How does it affect how they view trust, not just in the world, but in their own parents?
Right. What happens to that crucial need for independence when someone is virtually looking over your shoulder all the time? It's all about understanding how teenagers develop, right? It's that stage in life where it's all about autonomy, figuring out who you are, separate from your parents, I mean.
Right.
And privacy is a big part of that. And, yeah, even a little risk-taking.
You have to fall down to learn to get back up, right? You can't learn to be a responsible adult if someone's always right there to catch you before you trip. I remember when I was around Harrison's age.
He's 14. Right.
Oh, 14. Or at least that's how old I felt at the time. Anyway, I finally convinced my parents to let me go to this concert, 2-hour train ride each way, with just my friend Sarah. I'm sure they were freaking out, but they let us go. And you know what? Nothing bad happened. We had a blast. We felt so grown up. And hey, I learned how to navigate the train system, buy a pretzel from a grumpy vendor. Life skill. Exactly. And the research actually supports this. There was a study in the International Journal of Adolescence and Youth where they talked to a bunch of teenagers and, well, a lot of them understood why their parents were concerned about safety and all that. But a lot of them felt like the constant contact, the tracking, it was just too much.
Too much? How so?
One quote from the study really stuck with me. One of the teens said, "My parents often went too far. Like they felt suffocated, couldn't make their own choices, even small ones."
Right.
And when you think about it, it makes sense. Imagine always feeling like someone's watching your every move, judging you. It really eats away at that trust.
Totally. And then it becomes this power struggle, doesn't it? Like with Megan and Harrison, she was telling us how after a few months of having the phone and being tracked, he started getting really resentful about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And like he felt like she didn't trust him at all, even though he hadn't done anything to break that trust.
Yeah. Which is a perfect example of how this can actually backfire. There's this study actually in computers and human behavior, and they found this link, a direct link, between feeling like your privacy is being invaded and, well, acting out, rebelling.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a natural defense mechanism. You feel controlled, so you push back.
And I bet that leads to even more sneaking around, more hiding stuff from your parents, which just makes the parents even more anxious.
And the cycle continues. Exactly. And here's another thing that's important for parents to consider. This whole location tracking thing, it can create this false sense of security.
Okay, I'm going to need you to break that one down for me. What does that mean exactly?
Well, these apps, they tell you where your kid is. That's it. They don't tell you what they're doing or who they're with. So you see your kids at the park. You've already decided the park is an okay place to be.
Right.
But you have no idea if they're with their good friends or if they're being pressured into doing something they don't want to do. You just don't know.
So it's like a security blanket, but with holes in it.
Exactly. You think you're covered, but you're not. And you might even miss out on those opportunities to have those really important conversations about peer pressure, about trusting your gut, about what to do if someone is making you uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
And this actually ties into what Caitlin Titches from the Digital Wellness Lab at Boston Children's Hospital has talked about.
Okay.
She argues that instead of relying on these apps to do all the work, we should be equipping our teenagers with, like, real-world safety strategies.
Give them the tools to be their own GPS, so to speak.
There you go. That's it. It's about teaching them how to assess risk, how to say no. If someone's asking them to do something that feels wrong, how to get out of a bad situation. Those are the skills that'll actually keep them safe, not just now, but as adults too.
Makes sense. But teaching those skills, that takes time and patience, and maybe even revisiting some of our own ideas about what it means to be a teenager today.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, I think, a whole other layer of complexity to this.
Mm-hmm.
All the unforeseen consequences of introducing smartphones so young, even if it's just for tracking at first. It really is.
Yeah.
So how do we find that balance then between wanting to protect our kids, but also letting them actually be kids, you know? I keep thinking about Megan and Harrison. She wants to trust him, but she's scared. It's tough.
It is tough. There's no easy answer, no one-size-fits-all solution. But a lot of experts, they point to open communication as being key. Like, instead of it being this battle, this back and forth, just talk to your kid.
Like an actual conversation, not just because I said so kind of thing.
Exactly. There's this researcher at Vanderbilt, Pamela Wisniewski. She studies youth online safety. And she put it really well. She said, if it's a tool for safety and open communication, that's one thing. But if it's a tool for punishment and policing, that's another. Big difference.
That's a great way to put it. It's about trust, not control.
Exactly. Talk to your teen about what your concerns are, but also listen to their side of it. Maybe you can find some middle ground, like agreeing on certain times to check in, or letting you know if their plans change, or even just sharing their location with a friend if they're going somewhere you're not thrilled about.
So it's about finding solutions that work for both sides, not just laying down the law.
Right. And then as they get older, take on more responsibility, it'll probably change again. Which gets to another big question. When is it time to let go completely? When does that tracking become too much?
Oh, that's a tough one. Especially nowadays when it feels like we can track everything.
I know, it's tempting. But sometimes it's better to step back. Think about when they go off to college.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
It's tempting to want to hold on to that tracking, especially with all the new worries that come with them being away from home. But it's also a time when they need to be making those choices on their own, learning from their mistakes, figuring out who they are without that virtual leash.
Just like we were talking about before, right? Preparing them for the real world. We can't shield them from it forever, even if we wanted to.
Exactly. It's so complex because it's not about the technology, really. It's about the nature of parenting, trust, knowing when to step back. It really makes you think. In this world where we can be constantly connected, how do we teach young people to be safe and responsible, but still give them the space they need to grow?
That's the big question we're left with, isn't it? And it's something for all of us to think about. Parents, non-parents. Maybe even spark a conversation or two with your own families.
Because at the end of the day, we want to raise capable, well-rounded young people who can handle this increasingly complex world, on and offline.
And hey, who maybe even answer the phone when you call once in a while.
Now, that's a whole other episode.
It really is. Until next time on The Deep Dive, everyone, remember that open communication is key. Talk to your kids, listen to what they have to say, and trust that they're doing their best even when it's messy.